Remember how you loved the stories at bedtime about princesses and fairy godmothers? Well, you may want to hold on tighter to your teddy bear and keep that nightlight on, because these are not your mother's bedtime stories.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Not Your Mother's Bedtime Story. Welcome back again after a brief hiatus, maybe 3-4 weeks, just for us to survive the holidays. So we're back in spooky mode. Just want to make sure everybody's here. So we'll go around and introduce ourselves.
Colleen's here.
I'm Chrissy.
I'm Karen, the mom.
Sherry's here as well. Hello, everybody.
And we'll introduce our repeat guest in just a second. But we were just chatting before we started here about, so my son had jaw surgery for his orthodontics, and it required him to break his jaw. And he's usually a trumpet player, and he can't play trumpet while he's got a broken jaw. And so he's moved over to percussion. And I was super excited because he said he was going to play cowbell at the pep band on Friday night. And so again, of course, if anybody knows anything about cowbell, you have to have a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell. And then
we need Deuce.
And we were talking and sharing around. So Sherry, if you find a picture of your Halloween costume back in the day where you were more cowbell, we'll share that on our social media.
Yeah, so I was portraying Will Ferrell's character in Saturday Night Live when he was doing the cowbell for the skit that he did. So if you can imagine, I mean, he's wearing that brown shirt with his belly hanging out and curly hair. So I had a curly mullet wig, and I found some, stick-on chest hair, and, I had a cowbell that I attached to my belt loop. So I actually still have the cowbell somewhere. So that was my costume for Halloween many years ago. So we'll see if we can find that and get a picture out to everyone to see.
It's awesome. I've been thinking of Blue Oyster Cult like all weekend now. It's in my head. Just la, 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 la.
You're lucky that's the song that you have in your head. I had to watch the cheerleader performance to Bitch Better Have My Money last night.
Whoa.
Seems a little risque.
I saw that.
Wow.
Boy, who chose that one?
It was interesting. I'll just say that.
High school pep bands. Well, I'll go ahead and get into the spookiness, because we've got another good one today. So I'm going to welcome back JR. If you remember back in episode 5, I believe, JR and Elva came on and told us some creepy tales about, JR's time in Mexico. And this one, JR and I are coworkers. And prior to him working at our workplace, he had I don't know if it's the luck or the misfortune of working at 2 haunted workplaces. And I don't know, it's interesting. We were talking about this just yesterday with some of our other coworkers of whether our current workplace is haunted. And there's a few stories here and there, but these stories that JR has are definitely creepy. And I guess I'll let you go for it.
The first one's I worked at a aluminum refinery plant, or actually a plant that made aluminum, not refined it, but made aluminum. And I worked there for about 10 years. And the first couple of years, I just worked in the during day shift and switched around. So it was uneventful, really. When I switched over to a different job, I was working by myself or with one other coworker on night shift. So there was a lot of nights where I was just alone, walking around, doing my thing. And you'd hear the occasional weird noise, and you always discounted it and kept going. Sometimes you'd hear there's a lot of like broken concrete, broken bricks, and that kind of stuff. And every once in a while, you'd hear a brick hit the wall or something like that. It was like kind of like a sheeting, so you could hear it really vivid. you always thought it was someone from another department coming over that was bored, and they just trying to mess with you. So I never really thought anything much of it until one time I used to run the equipment. I used to run a lot of the overhead cranes, and it was a solitary job, that one too. And usually you just did your job and the whole night, 10, 11 hours, never really saw anybody. You hardly ever saw anybody except for that coworker that you had with you. And one particular night, just running my crane back and forth, and there's these open pits that you're trying to fill with material. So that's what you're doing with the overhead crane, is you're just moving material from one point to the other, trying to keep these holes packed. They're 16-foot holes, and then there's a middle pathway that if anybody's going to walk through them, the middle is the best place to walk through, because then the craneman can see you. So I'm working on the crane, just going back and forth, and I notice someone walking through the middle. I don't really pay any attention to it at first. I see the person, he looks up at me, I look away, and I start doing my work, and I'm like, well, he has kind of weird clothing. Why would he have that clothing? Because at the time when I worked, we wore blue. Pretty much everybody in the plant wore some kind of blue uniform, and they were like, the plant gave them to you, and you had a hard hat, which was, telltale. You have a hard hat and a respirator. Everybody had it. So when I first saw the person, I'm like, well, that's kind of weird that, he doesn't have that kind of stuff. I looked away, and then I looked back, and I was pretty far away, maybe like, 100 feet from the person, a little bit further. And I looked back, and I looked at the person again, and he looked right at me. We kind of like looked at each other, and then I turned and I released the latch for the material. And I'm like, well, I wonder who that is, if that's like a safety person that's in the wrong spot, but what would they be doing here at like 2 a.m? So I turned to look again, and the person's gone. And I'm like, well, both sides of that are empty pits, and it's like the biggest no-no ever. You could get fired if you walk across those empty pits. It's like automatic termination. So I look back over, and I'm like, well, if that's a safety guy, he just broke the biggest rule of all, walking across. So I just put it in the back of my mind and kept working. That morning, I mentioned it to my coworker, didn't think anything of it. He thought it was kind of weird that he wasn't wearing a hard hat. So then the next day, in the afternoon when I came in for my next shift, I was talking to a guy that had been working there for about 35 years. And I was just talking to him, saying, hey, this and that, small talk. And then I mentioned, hey, do you know anything about, why would a person be walking around? He had a lot of information, that kind of stuff. Why would a person be walking around at this time of a night? And he's like, well, what was he wearing? So then I said, oh, he was wearing blue jeans, a buttoned up green shirt, and a baseball cap. And he kind of like looked at me, and he's like, are you sure that's what he was wearing? Yeah, I'm positive. Are you positive that's what he was wearing? He's like, it was a button up shirt. I'm like, yeah, it was a button up shirt. Oh my gosh. And I'm like, what are you getting me scared? Like, was that a really important person? He's like, when we first opened the plant and when we were building this area, that's what we would wear. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you saw someone, I don't know if it was the spirit or whatever you think you saw, but if you're sure you saw that, you saw an old timer that came back and was walking around the plant. And then I just got chills again right now.
Me too.
But I was like, what? Like, I just kind of stayed silent, and I'm like, and he's like, I really hope you're joking. And I'm like, I'm not. He's like, well,
yeah.
And why would you make something like that up?
And it was that realization, like afterwards, where I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just saw what I saw. And I don't know, it was one of the weirdest things that come to that realization in front of that person. And he knew I was genuine when I was like, what? Like, I can't believe that was what it was.
Wow.
And he didn't mention anything about anyone passing away during the...
They've had 3 people pass away in that plant. So they might have been one of those 3 people. But I know that there's when there's a lot of that residual energy. I mean, if you spend your whole lifetime in a place and that's all you know, you're probably going to return to that in the afterlife. So it's either someone that passed away or it's someone that came back to the only place that they knew.
It's interesting though too. Like you almost would say, it's like a residual haunting, like somebody going about their normal workday back in the day. But the fact that, like you said, you guys looked at each other though almost makes it like creepier, where either he's looking through you and he just happened to be, he was looking at something else, or the fact that, if you guys actually made like eye contact and acknowledged each other.
Yeah. Well, and that was one of the safety things, was when there was a crane running overhead, is you always waited to make eye contact with the craneman before you proceeded. So I could see why you waited to make eye contact. I mean, either way, I don't know if it was, like I said, a memory, a residual memory, or it was an actual, person. But either way.
It's not what you want to see at 2 a.m.
JR, you mentioned that you heard the noises. Did other coworkers ever experience that too?
I had a couple of coworkers mention certain things, one time one of the guys was standing in the middle of the furnace looking away, and he went to turn, and he felt like when he turned his body, he felt like somebody grabbed the back of his shirt and pulled him, and he actually, when he got pulled, it was so hard that he actually took a step back and then looked. There's other instances like that. I've walked into rooms in the middle of the night and heard the door close. After you walk in the room and you're looking at this door and you see the door just close by itself. And these are really heavy, metal doors. They're just closing by themselves. You learn not to think anything of it, because you are by yourself, so you try not to. But as far as any full apparitions, I don't think I've ever heard or talked to anybody that has had that stuff happen to them. It's from the 1950s, so it's...
Yeah, I did some research beforehand when I knew you were going to talk about it, and I think it said 1952 was when it first opened. So yeah, it's a lot of years of a lot of people putting in a lot of hours, so makes sense.
Yeah.
Eek.
And what is it now? Is it still...
No, it's curtailed. They curtailed it in 2016.
Okay. Yeah, they haven't done any work out there. I was reading too to see if they were going to put anything else in there, and I think the PUD maybe wants that land or something, but yeah, nothing's going on out there. So sounds like a right place for a ghost hunter's investigation or something.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is it known that there's activity there? I wonder if there has been any investigations.
Well, I think there's still they still have some kind of skeleton crew out there, certain maintenance guys still are out there just to make sure that if anything like a pipe bursting or something like that, there's still some kind of person that can fix that before it gets too bad. I'm sure they're experiencing something, whether they want to or not.
Right. Yeah, you'd think that just doesn't go away.
I like the use of skeleton crew.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, and then after Alcoa, you moved on. Did you go directly to the next haunted place for employment?
No, I went to school and I worked at a couple other places, and then I got that job at the psychiatric facility. Yeah, that place that I worked at used to be I can't remember what it was. Do you remember what it was before?
Yeah, I had to do some research too, because I thought it was a hospital. I thought it was Old Deaconess, but it's actually, they said, just a long-term care facility, which still makes sense for having that kind of activity. Yeah,
so that place, there was a lot of tension in the area always because of the situation that everybody was in. So it was, you could already feel it. And to put on top of that, the stuff that had gone on there before, it just, compiles it. I started working there a night shift, and at first it was fine. Some people, I did hear from some people saying that there's some weird stuff going on, but I'm always seeing is believing. I'm not gonna try to be cautious when I haven't really seen it too much. But it got real for me real quick at that place. We used to do some rounding, check on patients and that kind of stuff, and sometimes you'd shine the light in a room that was empty because you needed to check to see if anyone had gone in there, and you'd see like a little movement here and there, and you're just like, okay, that I'm just gonna discount that. Or you actually have to, if you see something like that, you have to walk into the room to make sure that there isn't anyone in there. And then when you come to the realization that there's nobody in there and you just saw that, it just makes it that much worse. But that place where the kitchen was used to be a morgue, and it didn't happen often, but when it did, you knew, and it didn't matter who it was, you knew that it was happening. You walk through that door, as soon as you open the door, the air felt heavy. It was like a weight. And the very first time it happened to me, I don't know, it like almost like a primal instinct telling me, don't go in there. Like, so I actually, the first time that it happened, I closed the door and I went around. I went through the other side, and then I mentioned it to my mom, and she said that you needed to face it, don't let it chase you away. So you needed to either say a prayer or not challenge it, but let it know, hey, I'm not scared of you. I'm just going to walk through here. I don't mean you any harm. So I'm like, okay, I'll try that next time. So then a couple weeks went by, and I went through there again, and I felt it again, and I did it. I was like, I'm not scared, and I'm not going to try to do anything to you. I just want to walk through here. And as soon as I stepped in, I could feel it. It was like I don't know how to, it's almost like if you walk into a stadium for the first time and you have all these eyes looking at you and you feel that like presence. That's how it felt like to me. Like you're just like everybody's watching you and you just got this weight. And I just walked right through there and I started shaking. I got all the way to the door, checked it to make sure, because you have to check to see if the doors are locked. So I'm checking the door to see if it's locked, and then I walk out, and as soon as I walk into the adjacent room, didn't have a door, but I just walked right through it. Boom, it was gone. The feeling was completely gone. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? So then that's what I did every single time that happened. Happened about maybe 10 times from the time that I worked there. I just walk in there and open the door, and I'm like, oh, here we go again. Just walk through there, and you just felt it. You just felt that weight every time, and it it was bad, but I made it through. I actually took one of my coworkers through there, and he got to the door and kind of did the same thing I did the first time. He's like, I don't know if I really can walk through here. You just got to do it. Come on, we have to check. I don't know why, but yesterday I walked through this room and it was fine. Why does it feel like this now? I'm like, you're going to feel it like this. I don't know what happened here, but this is what, we have to do. So I think he ended up quitting after that. I don't know if it was because of that or because of something else, but that place was not cool when it came to that stuff.
And you mentioned that it felt like there was a lot of eyes on you, but did it feel that it was, malicious, or did it feel like sadness? Or, was there any kind of feeling or emotion associated with it?
Yeah, it was sadness. It was like sadness and like being lost, like it was just like this weight, like they just almost like they felt abandoned. I don't know. Maybe that's what it was, but it was just that kind of weight, not necessarily a evil, like, I'm going to get you kind of thing. It was definitely different. But one of the other memorable things that happened there, besides stuff getting knocked down, I'll tell you this one. We had one room where a cat would jump on a bed, and people that had not met each other that stayed in that room would come and tell us the same exact story of a cat that they felt in the middle of the night jump on the bed, and they could feel the little feet, and they could sometimes hear the purring. And these are people that never met each other, and I felt a cat last night, and I don't know if you guys have pets, but I had my door locked, and I don't appreciate animals coming in here. And I'm like, we don't have any cats, we don't have anything, any kind of pets. And then, 3 weeks down the road, another person goes into that room, sleeps in it, and then you get the same story. So I think that maybe there was someone that lived in that room that had a cat, and That was the residual energy of the cat.
Which makes more sense now that it was a long-term care facility and not a hospital, because it's very likely, if they like let one of the residents have
They
a
would have
cat
a
at
pet,
some point.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then one of the biggest things that happened to me there was we watched cameras. We watched a lot of the cameras, like all the hallways and everything. We had to make sure that we took into account where everybody was at all times and kind of just did surveillance on it. You'd see shadows here and there moving around and stuff. But one night I was sitting there and it was like 3 or 4 in the morning, sitting there watching the cameras. And I look over and I start talking to one of my coworkers, and the other coworker's sitting behind me. And she's kind of watching the cameras and looking at her computer and watching the cameras as well. So I look back to the camera and I see a person, and it's infrared, so you see the white outline, and you can see the person. They're standing right next to the corner of where the lounge meets the hallway, right on that corner, standing right there. And I'm like, I don't recognize that person. And the way the camera looked, you can see both walls. It's like a kind of like a fisheye kind of camera, so you could see both walls pretty well. Well, that person was standing there, and I'm looking, man, I don't, and I was about to turn to look at my coworker to see if she recognized the person. Well, it moved across and went right into the wall, and I was like, what?
What the?
And without even hesitating, I turned.
I think my
just said
exclamation might have been a little different than
WTF.
what, but
So I look behind me to my coworker. I'm like hoping that she saw the same thing I did, and her color just escaped from her face, and she's looking at the camera still. And I'm like, I really hope you just saw what I just saw. And she's like, oh my God. And she looked at the nurse that was in charge, and she said, I think I need to go home now.
No.
And she wanted to go home. And so I'm like, okay, I just need to go out there and make sure that that wasn't an actual person, even though I saw them go through the wall. So I got up and went around and walked through there. And as I walked through there, I felt like there was a presence there, but I didn't see anything. But I can still picture it. Just walk right through that wall, and I'm like, whoa. There was.
oh my goodness. And again, the validation of having somebody else witness exactly what you saw, and at the exact same moment, it's like, okay, maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me, maybe they moved quickly and I just missed it. But if your coworker, obviously by the reaction that you just described, must have seen the same thing.
Yeah, I didn't dare, because it was recorded. I didn't dare rewind it and watch it again, because once was enough for me.
That was my question.
I don't know if my other coworkers, because I turned and I
Sure,
told them
JR,
what
you wouldn't want
happened.
to. Let's see that in slow motion.
Once was enough. Yeah, I'm sure they did it. I'm sure they went back and looked at it a couple of times. And that actually, in that same spot, one of my other coworkers on another night later, he actually got tripped by something there in that exact corner. And they were saying that they think it might have been a little girl or something. Like, it was little. It was look like the size of like an 8-9-year-old girl. So they're playing around or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the story I remember that you told me. And then, but yeah, like a little girl, I don't know if that fits with like the whole long-term care facility history,
Right.
but I mean, who knows? I couldn't find much more if it was ever anything else besides long-term care.
It wasn't a hospital. It's
It's a heck of a game of hide and seek if
Tag
she
your-
can go through walls.
He's a cheater. Cheating.
Jeez.
Yeah, long-term care, was that only reserved for elderly? I mean, it could have been somebody who was sick. It could have been,
True.
I don't know how long ago this was or what the years were that it was that long-term care, but it could have been a sick child that, they just had
Yeah.
some kind of illness.
Yeah, that building, I think that one was
were there.
1955, according to Redfin. I was looking at when it was built. So, I mean, it's old. It's got a history. Again, all that residual energy that's just been hanging
Could have
out
been
there.
like polio or something, that the girl was suffering.
True, I didn't think about polio. Of course, 55.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it could still.
Polio would have been a big outbreak,
Yeah.
around the, the 50s and stuff. So
Maybe it was her cat.
Maybe.
Well, even like going back to the morgue, it's interesting.
Yeah, can we go back to that for a second? Did you say that was a morgue that then got turned into a kitchen?
Yeah.
I want
to just clarify that. I thought that's what I heard. Yeah.
I'll just bring my lunch here.
Well, you know, it probably had really good good refrigeration.
We
Well, I
got
think
the
the
special
lounge
for
was the
today.
one that was the actual morgue.
Oh, the lounge.
Yeah, the lounge right next, or not the lounge, but the dining area was the part that was the morgue.
Oh
and
my
then,
God. Ew.
yeah, it doesn't make it any better.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
These are unusual refrigerators. They're all like just a bunch of squares on the.
yeah,
All the drawers. That's what we got here.
Oh,
really long drawers.
the ham's not in this drawer. Let's try the other one.
Heck of a
No.
charcuterie
Here's
board
the-
here. Let me just pull this out. Ew.
Looking for the carrots.
Buffet. Gross.
We got Roger in here. Oh, gee.
But you said that sometimes you felt it, sometimes not too, which is really interesting.
Yeah,
So it's like you wonder what was happening to like maybe even drum up, if it's past souls who are hanging out and want to see what's going on, where sometimes they have enough energy to manifest and sometimes they don't.
yeah, and I wasn't like at first I thought I was the only one that was feeling it, but later I mentioned it to a couple of my coworkers after I stopped working there, and they were adamant that they were feeling the same thing. They just didn't want to say anything because they didn't want to sound crazy. So I'm sure that there's other stuff that went on there that people either just decided that they didn't see it or they didn't want to see it, or I don't know. People cope with that kind of stuff, have different perspectives of that kind of stuff differently,
Well, and some people are more sensitive to things than others. You definitely are, but whether everybody can sense the same things too.
And what is it now? Is it still something today?
Yeah, it's a
Okay, it is
psychiatric
still.
facility still. Yeah.
Yeah, which is tough too, depending on the psychiatric illness that somebody's recovering from. They may not believe what they're seeing also, and like, well, I just must be stressed, or like you said, the residents or patients are like, I don't know if you guys have cats here, but can you just keep them out of my room? Because
Yeah, it kind of makes for some interesting therapy sessions. Well, it's like, did you really see that? Or
Right.
I don't know.
And then to find out that they did actually see that, nobody
Right.
believed them.
yeah. Well, wasn't there, or was that the same room? Was that the cat room where there was some room too where someone would stay in and it was always the same time each night that they would get awakened or they'd need to get out of bed?
Oh yeah, there was a different room, but yeah, it's same one. Like someone would grab onto them, and they kept complaining that someone was waking them up. Like they were like, someone needs to stop coming into this room and waking me up. And then the next person that stayed in that room, it was the same thing.
Yeah.
That one was more constant. Actually, that room we ended up shying away from putting people in there unless we were completely full.
And did they say how they were woken up? Like, they were being tugged on, or
Just like if someone was trying to wake you up, feel like the hands just come on you and start.
And so so the facilities, if they were in their room, would the person in the room be able to lock their own door, or would you be locking it from the outside?
I locked it from the outside.
Okay, so so they were thinking that somebody was coming in there, and
They thought it was one of the staff members coming in there and trying to wake them up because it's pitch black, so you
can't see.
weren't able to see anything.
Yeah. That's the worst. One, to be woken up, and two, to be woken up by somebody that's not there. Like, oh.
Right. It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Like little cat feet on your bed.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
cat.
some creepy.
I'm allergic.
I think I would rather have the little cat feet than somebody like physically shaking me awake.
Yeah, me too.
I'll take the cat feet and the purring.
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. Like I said, they would do sometimes they would mention that they'd hear the purring as well, which is like, I don't know how anything would, unless it was an actual spirit like mimicking a cat, because it was more welcomed
That's
than
a
a
creepy
person.
thought. Oh my goodness.
But
I know.
yeah,
I like to think it's just a residual
Right,
kitty.
It's just a cat. Not
Yeah.
somebody. No, we just went down a different path.
Yeah. Well, I know, and I know that pets do that. Like my wife had a dog that had been with the family for 12 years, and every once in a while when we go stay at her house or her parents' house, you can hear the nails on the floor, like if a cat or a dog was walking on it. And then sometimes there was that scent of her. You know how dogs, they're outside, they have that certain scent to them. You'd be sitting there watching TV and you get that smell, like if the dog was there, or other little things that the dog used to do. And it passed away before my first son was born, and it was like really active when we brought him over the first time, like that residual spirit, kind of like wanting to meet him, I'm guessing. I don't know, but every once in a while, yeah, you'll be spending the night and it'll be like 2 a.m. and you'll hear the
Oh my goodness.
come across and you go, oh, there's the dog.
Wants to go outside.
Yeah, wants to go outside.
Yeah, but I guess why not? I mean, there's residual people hauntings,
Right.
or why not residual
And
animals?
They
if
say
they had
animals,
that pet,
animals have souls.
yeah, if they had that pet that's all that pet knew, then they're going to keep coming back, and this is my family, and I'm going to stay here. And
Yeah.
I remember seeing a video a long time ago, and somebody caught it on their like their house camera. It was somebody walking a dog, and then you see this little spirit dog like following along. And the person, the person showed it to the person that was walking by, and I guess she started crying, and she said that she had just lost this dog, recently and everything. But when she watched the video, she's like, that's exactly what it was just following her along, like on their normal walking route that they would take. So I know, sad. Like, oh, I want to go for the walk.
Yeah.
Still going.
But yeah, so I mean, you're right, Chris. Like, people are, why wouldn't animals be too? That's where they're comfortable. They just didn't cross over the rainbow bridge.
Well, these are some good ones,
Those
JR.
are
And like we said, nothing creepy yet at our workplace, and I've been there almost 20 years. I mean, again, we've had like, I don't know if you don't want to tell like the story by telephone, because it's like, well, my IT director told me that these guys, but there were some creepy ones. Our building used to be the old eye and ear clinic in town, and now it's been our outpatient clinic for a long time. But I mean, there's a morgue there too. That's where the maintenance room is. Actually, was the former morgue. I don't know if you knew that. Somebody told me that. Somebody told me that at one point.
It's not the kitchen.
That was a morgue. It's not a kitchen.
That's
it's down the hall from the
opportunity
break room.
miss there.
It's,
you might want to put in that.
Yeah, exactly.
recommendation.
Why they're doing that with space planning, but it's a story by telephone, but still creepy enough where they had space that was rented out by other practitioners. There were some dentists and there was an oral surgeon, and he was having his chair replaced in his office after hours. And there were 2 guys that were working on it. And this was down on the lower level in the basement, right across where the pharmacy used to be. Now we're upstairs, but they were installing the chair and both heard like the distinct noise of children playing. And they went around the corner of the hallway and there was nothing there. So they kept continuing to work. And then, as they worked, like the sounds kept coming closer to where they were. And so they peeked out again and there's nobody there. And they're like, we're out of here. And they refused to install that chair after hours. They're like, no, we'll do it while you're here. But we're not coming back at night. And I don't know. I've been there at night, or I've been there very early in the morning. And that's when I get creeped out, scanners start to beep or labels start to print all by themselves, and I'll be in there like, but nothing that I can confirm is really, not just some sort of IT glitch where the labels got to print every morning and it's, I don't know. ghost needs his painkillers. I don't know.
Well,
just
if it's
Princess.
a bunch of kids, are they like funny names or something? Like maybe if they're printing out the
Funny
label.
name?
Yeah, like if it was kids, you know,
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
like making a joke.
Well, yeah, somebody named the ghost Lily at the clinic, but I don't know where that came from either.
Like the Amanda
Does she-
Hug and
yeah,
Kiss or
popular
something.
That's a popular,
Amanda.
popular name, really.
Mo Lester.
Uh-huh. You're gonna check those labels now, aren't you?
Well, they're blank.
Oh,
they
they're
just
blank.
print out like all this. Yeah, so as I said, it's
They
like
just
it's a
start
ghost
printing?
label. Yeah, it'll just print. So for some reason, I'll be coming into work. I'm the first one there. Loading things up. You'll hear scanners beep and that kind of thing, and like that I can explain away. But sometimes a label will print. I just be standing there and it's blank. It just spits out an empty label, and it's a distinct noise. We know it. We hear it hundreds of times a day. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, I don't want to go look and see what's on that label.
Get out.
Yeah. Well, JR, if you're able to, that'd be a good prank to play on her. Just try to get like that label's timing so it's just right. Put something on it.
I see you.
Watch out now.
That's a long con right there. That would be really bad. But...
There you go.
Put it on the list.
Get working on that.
Watch out, Chrissy.
Well, thank you. We'll let you get back to your day, and I haven't checked the Seahawks score to see if they're winning or losing. So
They got a tough
So
game.
good.
Yeah.
I'm just glad I get to watch one more game.
I
That's all.
just looked at the score. I won't spoil it. I won't tell you.
Oh no, not good.
Well, it depends on what side of the fence.
Well, yep. Again, well, at least, like I said, at least you guys made it. Something the Packers didn't. So
Yeah, you
all
made it to
power
the
to
playoffs.
you. Go Gino.
Yay. I appreciate you
Thank
having
you.
me.
Yeah, thank you
Oh,
again.
great stories they are. Great
Yeah,
story.
thank you. Yeah, thank you. I have more
Oh,
too,
wow.
so I'll
Oh
probably
yeah,
A three-peat.
you're gonna be it's like Saturday Night Live. You'll be on the 5-timers club after a while here. Keep going.
We'll get him a little smoking jacket.
Well, great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you again for listening. Please remember, if you have a story to share, you can submit it to our Gmail at notyourmothersbedtimestory at Gmail. We're always looking for more scary stories to listen to. So I guess if anybody has anything else, I'll let you take it away, Mom.
Thank you for listening, and remember to keep that night light on. Good night, sweet dreams.
If you have a story to share, please send it to notyourmothersbedtimestory at gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Not Your Mother's Bedtime Story. And please help us grow by following us on your favorite podcast platform, leaving us a positive review, and telling a friend. Thank you for your support.